Hi everyone. I'm here today to talk to you about craft for connection. We live in an attention economy where everyone and everything is vying for your eyeballs. I'm a creative director at a performance marketing agency, so I can confidently say that every piece of content you consume is designed to get a reaction out of you. At the very least, get you to stop scrolling, and usually get you to open your wallet. And any time you spend interacting with content online is measurable data. And there are a host of acronyms used to assign worth to your time. There are engagement rates like click-through rate and thumbstock rate and landing page view. And ultimately, there's ROAS, or return on ad spend. And all this data, brands will use it to optimize their content further, pull you in deeper, and rob you of your greatest currency, your attention. Of the $134.9 billion that Meta made in 2023, approximately 99% of that came from ad spend, from brands spending money on the platform, trying to capture your attention. I think that says a lot about just how valuable it is. As I've honed my career in this digital space, I really began to question how much time I was spending online. I was feeling overwhelmed, disconnected, anxious, and like I was really struggling to be present. And whether you work in digital marketing or not, I think that's becoming more of a norm for all of us today. In fact, the average person scrolls over the length of the Statue of Liberty in social media feed every day. That is over 300 feet of scrolling every day. It's a wonder our thumbs don't fall off. So when we're spending an average of 3 hours a day on social media, we have to really ask ourselves, in this world of fractured focus, fueled by an attention economy, how do we stay rooted in what really matters? How do we stay connected to those who really matter most? In a world that says do more, make more, monetize your hobbies, maximize your output, how do we let all that distraction fall away and be truly present? I've found the answer to all of those questions in the form of quilting and practicing a craft and working with my hands. And whether I am sewing a quilt or talking to someone about one they've made, hearing the origin story, those are times where I feel really captivated and truly connected. Like when I talked to my great-grandmother, Granny B, about this quilt she made. This is a king-size quilt, and she hand-stitched every piece of it. She worked on this in between customers at her jewelry store in a small town in Mississippi in the 60s. She didn't have the internet to fill her time. Instead, she practiced her craft. Or when I look at this quilt was given to me. It was made by Gigi, whose bottom right image on the far right is her and her family, her sisters. Gigi is my mother's grandmother, my great-grandmother, but someone I only knew as a child. And when I see this quilt, it reminds me of her. It helps her to live on in my life today. She made this patchwork quilt out of scraps of fabric left over from clothes that she made for herself, her children, and her grandchildren. And I'm lucky enough that my mom taught me how to quilt. This is her, Leanne, and one of the quilts that she's made. I think you're also seeing a really beautiful evolution of quilting through the ages and how it changes with the times. When I sew with my mom, when we make a quilt together, those are moments that I know I will always cherish and moments where I feel very connected. And when we're sewing a quilt, I find that 3 things really come into alignment. It is a physical, a mental, and a spiritual connection. The first is probably most obvious, it's physical. You can't really multitask when you're working on a quilt. You are quite literally rooted to the spot as you sew and cut and work out this craft. And that is where the mental connection comes in. Everything about quilting is focus. It is attention to detail. You are choosing your patterns and your fabrics from which there are endless options, and then you are cutting out the same piece hundreds of times. And you will arrange your quilt top, you will rearrange it a few dozen more times before you're happy with it, and then you'll pick it all up and you'll go to the sewing machine. And that is where you will sew the same stitch thousands of times. And that repetitive action almost becomes a meditative state. And while it might seem counterintuitive that being so busy with your hands would give your mind a break, that's exactly what it does. You are focused on the moment. And sure, there will be mistakes, but that is just a beautiful reminder that you've done something with your hands. The most surprising thing for me, though, was the spiritual connection. When I quilt, I feel this deep connection to the generations of quilters who have come before me. And I am grateful that I will be able to harness this craft, pass it on, and create that point of connection for those who come next. So much like growing deeper roots takes time, so does a quilt. And I was recently gifted one of the most time-consuming patterns. This is a double wedding ring quilt, traditionally given to a bride on her wedding day, and I was blessed with one on mine. My mom and her friend Peggy put over 300 hours into this quilt. 300 hours. When is the last time you put more than 3 hours into a singular focus? When is the last time you spent that much time with one of your closest friends? Now, we all love to receive a gift, but there is also joy in giving a quilt away. These are some of the quilts I've made and given over the years, and whether it's to a family member or faraway friend or welcoming a new baby into this world, giving a quilt away is the ability for the love I've poured in to take root in someone else's life. What I found is quilts are comfort, quilts are dedication, quilts are craft, and ultimately an act of love. To make an heirloom is to sew a quilt, to choose patterns and fabrics that resonate in this moment, but will one day act as a time capsule to the past. And when we work through this quilt, when we give it away, when we see this marvel that is the end result, we know that the journey of making it was the real reward. And every step of that took time, takes a lot of time. And we live in a world that says you should have done it faster. You should be able to multitask. You should be more efficient. You should have done it yesterday. So when we are constantly being pulled in all of these different directions, how does it feel? I want you to consider how this next slide makes you feel. Oh, I know. It's an overflowing inbox. It is so many unread messages, missed calls, a 24/7 news cycle, and an algorithm that never ends. And it is all fueled by an unhealthy amount of comparison coming from this endless source of entertainment that we keep in arm's length at all times. And we need to ask ourselves, when we spend so much time in these digital spaces, where are we really being rooted? Because what we give our attention to, that is where we are rooted. And if we are always in the digital world, what kind of life are we cultivating for ourselves? What kind of world are we cultivating for the next generation to come? When we spend all of our time scrolling, what happens to our minds? I'll tell you, we deplete our mental processing abilities. We over-index our time into processing. A new headline, a new meme, a new trend, a new workout, a new headline, a new tragedy, a new disaster. All of this processing is essentially exhausting our brains, and it's leaving little room for white space. And white space is just another way of saying imagination. And imagination is one of the key operators to our creativity. And when we are constantly bombarding ourselves with scrolling, we're leaving little room for imagination and little room for conceptual expansion. Conceptual expansion is a core part of creative thinking. It means going beyond the limits of our existing conceptual frameworks and being able to broaden our horizons. We are only able to achieve conceptual expansion if we are able to overcome functional fixedness and change our perspective. Think of it as being able to see something in a new light. We are only able to do this if we change our ways and how we spend our time. That allows us to expand our horizons, to see things in new light, to make room for imagination, for creativity, and that is ultimately the spark of all craft. When we are working through our craft, when we are thinking about where we spend our time, we have to go beyond scientific reasons of it all. So that's the neuroscience of why it's robbing you of your creativity, it being this endless scrolling. But there are real tangible benefits to practicing a craft. There are proven studies that show that hands-on work create a profound calming effect and reduce stress. One study found that cancer survivors who learned how to knit reported improved cognition and decreased stress levels after only 8 weeks. Another study found that coloring and drawing greatly reduced symptoms of anxiety and depression. And that is because these crafts, they act as a form of mindfulness. All of these different crafts, they are focused on detail. They are choosing your materials, they are moving your hands and practicing precision. And when you are doing these present moment tasks, you are practicing that form of mindfulness, and you're really not going to have a mind that strays. You will not ruminate on the past or be anxious about the future. You will enjoy living in the moment. So practicing a craft is both scientifically proven and emotionally relevant in our world today. And doing something analog, committing this much time to it, it's almost a form of rebellion in our digital world. And that is where we find our legacy. So with time as our most precious non-renewable resource, what we spend it on, that's our legacy. I want you to ask yourself, do you want to look back on your life and measure it in screen time or moments where you were truly present? At the end of your days, do you want to look back and say your best years were spent on your phone? I do not. And this is why I challenge you all today to do something analog, to practice a craft, to enjoy being truly present. You could cook, you could sew, you could garden, dance, sing, fish, woodwork, whatever it might be. Practice a craft that was passed on to you, or spend your time finding your own interest. Begin honing your own legacy. And in doing so, we will be able to teach the next generation that intentional time spent being present is far more important than being connected to what is online. That fueling capitalism in this digital economy is not the most rewarding use of our time. And those quick hits of dopamine are nothing but a means to an end for whoever benefits off of capturing your eyeballs. We can teach the next generation that craft is a way of reclaiming our attention and being present. That is why I practice my craft. It gives me a break from the digital world, from performance, from metrics. Quilting reminds me that I am capable of creativity for creativity's sake. It roots me in something that will last and brings a beautiful presence to an otherwise very busy life. But you don't have to be a quilter, a craftsman, or even consider yourself a creative. You just have to be willing to make something with your hands, with your time, with your attention. You don't need to post it, and you don't need permission. You just need to be present. My hope for all of you today is that you will rebel in this digital world, that you will disconnect, make something with your hands, and enjoy being truly present. Because that is how we stay rooted. Thank you.